Good morning and welcome to Memphis Theological Seminary's second session with our chat about chaplaincy. Last night we had a wonderful time talking about healthcare chaplaincy, and today we have a panel of experienced individuals who are currently serving in chaplaincy roles in the criminal justice system. So I am going to have each of them introduce themselves to you, and they will let you know where they're currently serving, as well as how long they have been chaplains and serving in the chaplain ministry. So we're going to start with Chaplain Alma Harris, then Chaplain Parham, Arlen Parham, and then Chaplain William Smith III, in that order.
Good morning. Well, good afternoon. I am Chaplain Alma Harris. I am currently at the West Tennessee State Penitentiary, and I've been serving in chaplaincy since 2006.
Awesome. Chaplain Parham?
Yes, ma'am. So I am at East Arkansas Regional Unit. I'm the senior chaplain at East Arkansas Regional Unit. And I've been there as a chaplain 6 years. I also started off in as a correction officer. That kind of led me in. I'll probably talk about that a little later.
Wonderful. And both you and Chaplain Harris have that in common. So that is awesome. And then Chaplain Smith?
Good afternoon again, and thank you so much, Dr. Levant, for this invitation. I am again William Smith III. I serve as the new chaplain at the Mark Luttrell Transitional Center here in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm also pastor at Berean Missionary Baptist Church in the White Haven community of Memphis. I served newly, I guess going on 1 month, served as a chaplain at the VA Medical Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. And before being hired as the chaplain here at Mark Luttrell, I served as volunteer chaplain here for a couple of months. So I'm still getting into the groove of this, but chaplaincy is not foreign to me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. You're still dragging just a little bit, but sounding better, Dr. Smith. But that is great. That matter of fact, that's a great segue. One of the things that is a little unique, I was talking to Chaplain Harris and Chaplain Parham a little earlier and asking, one of the concerns for a lot of our participants last night was the demand or the requirement in the healthcare setting to be board certified in order to serve in the role of chaplain. And so I was asking Chaplain Harris and Chaplain Parham, in the context of the criminal justice system, is the board certification required? And they each said that it is not necessarily required. However, I would like for each of you to briefly speak to how you ended up serving in chaplaincy in the criminal justice system. So I'll switch it around. Dr. Smith, you already told us you came from the VA in Nashville, right? Or is that correct?
But actually, that's not how I got into this role again.
Okay.
The way that I got into this role again, because that I got into this role, there's a preacher by the name of Robert Hill. Robert Hill, who was also, I believe, Chaplain Harris. He was the director of religious services for the state, and over volunteer of Tennessee. And Robert Hill and I, and so Robert Hill knew that I wanted to get more involved in this area, in this arena, and he called me and mentioned to me about services that could be provided here at Mark Luttrell. And that's really the segue into my, I guess, me getting on board again. I knew the superintendent, and getting back into this, it's a unique experience. Chaplain Harris, who was here, I will tell you, I think it was women and men, or just women, and now it's a all male population here at Mark Luttrell. I'm eager about the opportunities that we will probably embark upon and the partnerships that we'll be able to connect with. So that's kind of how I got more involved and now appointed and hired as chaplain.
And you mentioned earlier that you actually started out though as a volunteer, is that correct?
Yes. So my feet wet.
Okay.
Predecessor who served and he was on military orders. So they needed someone to fill the role of chaplaincy here at Mark Luttrell.
Okay.
And so I came aboard, went through the process of getting on board, a lengthy process, tedious process, but I came aboard as volunteer chaplain. And so I served in kind of a unofficial role, but still serving as a chaplain. And so I paused for a moment and then they called me back and said, hey, we have this position open. Are you interested? And so I said, yes, giving it a new try. And probably as we get into this conversation, I'll tell you the reason why I accepted and went ahead and did this. So I don't want to do all the talking. So
wonderful.
Yes.
That's great, because we will want to come back to that. And then I also want to talk to each of you about education and ordination requirements, because that's one of the other things about the hospital chaplaincy. They are required to have a Master of Divinity and they're required to be ordained. So Chaplain Parham, tell us about how you ended up. You mentioned you were a corrections officer. So how long were you a corrections officer? Now, Chaplain Parham, you have a military background before that corrections officer thing though, don't you?
Yeah, so God is he's so phenomenal. And so in my story, so I'm a pastor as well. And so I was pastoring and truck driving. And I had a desire to go, full-time ministry. Those two really don't match, trucking and pastoring. And I went to a work release center. I said, well, I told my wife, I said, we're gonna go start working on retirement, get my benefits. Hey, I'm an owner operator, so I'm gonna balance that and we're gonna make it. So once I got to Mississippi, we call it Mississippi County, it's a work release unit. And because of my truck driving background, I was driving inmates back and forth to work. And
Wow.
as I ministered to the inmates and, saying and whatever we have. So one of them, and that's how amazing God can do it. And one of them pulled me to the side. He said, hey, look, you're an officer, man, but have you ever thought about, don't you say some good stuff? You ever thought about being a counselor or something like that? I said, no, not really. I ain't coming for that. And that stuck with me. And so I started researching how do you be a chaplain versus being a correction officer. Because it wasn't a chaplain at the unit at the work release center that I was at. And God just opened that door. In the military side, I was trying to be a chaplain with the military, and it just like everything just started flowing together and it lined up. And since I've been a chaplain, hey, it's just another facet of a calling. I found out how much joy it brings to minister to those that some people have thrown away.
Yes.
They feel like it. We got 16 in my unit. We have 1,600 male inmates, and this is a full lockdown. This is what we call maximum security unit. So we got everything in there, and some of them are in there for life. Never, according to what man said, won't see the light of day. And so going into administering still give me great joy. So for me, it's a calling. But yes, that's how I segued in. God allowed an inmate that I one day would minister to in a chaplain stand to speak that into my life, and it took it from there. God just opened the door.
What a blessing. Chaplain Harris, tell us your story.
I started at Mark Luttrell as an officer in 1994. Before I went into chaplaincy, I was a transportation officer where I was transporting. Yes, I was transporting all over Tennessee. But I had accepted my calling in 2003, where I received my license at Friendship Baptist Church. Now it's up under Reverend Dr. Walter Green. And I was working in the transportation officer, minding my own business. When the warden came in and said, I need your help. Because he came to when I did my first sermon, so he knew about me being a associate minister at Friendship. He said, I just need you to come into the chapel. He took me to the chapel. He said, I need you to sit right here. Just sit right here. And I think I need you to get out your uniform and start wearing plain clothes. I said, why? He said, I need you to do this temporary. So temporary lasts for about a year. But however, I was ordained in October 29th of 2006. And it was still temporary. So I decided I think I need to go to seminary because I got a feeling this is not going to be temporary. So however, I went to seminary in 2007 and graduated in 2014. But however, there was a administrator from Nashville who came to be a temporary warden who set me down in front of a computer and said, I need you to put this application in to become permanent for chaplaincy. And he said, and your mind is already made up because I made it up for you. So, however, that's how I end up being in the chaplaincy.
The Lord works in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform.
He has such a sense of humor.
Yes, God does. And the blessing is, though, I tell people all the time as a recruiter here, because I did fail to introduce myself again. I get so excited about you all. So I am Felicia Levant, and I am one of the admissions associates recruiters here at Memphis Theological Seminary. But I tell people all the time that that when God calls, God is the one who qualifies. And then the other thing is that sometimes, however, I tell people all the time when you just talked about God having a sense of humor, is God will trick us into that thing, because if we had any idea on the front end what it was going to lead to, like Jonah, we run the other way. We would not have any parts of it. So I love you all's call stories. Now, the interesting thing is, I was talking about we want to put a pin in this education because each of you have actually matriculated here at Memphis Theological Seminary and have Master of Divinity degrees. Of course, Dr. Smith just completed our Doctor of Ministry program. But as far as educational requirements for one to serve as in chaplaincy in the criminal justice system, are there any specific educational requirements with regards to the theological training to prepare you? Because each of you said when you were called, you didn't have an MDiv or anything like that, but you understood the necessity of preparation, because as I'm sure your preacher said the same thing mine did when I told him I was called. He said, well, a call to preach is a call to prepare. So therefore, we understand that. However, is that a requirement to serve as a chaplain in the criminal justice system?
From the Arkansas side, you have to have a bachelor's coming into. They will accept any field. Quite naturally, they would like it be in psychology or sociology or theology and that nature. But they will. But you one of the qualifying factors is a bachelor's, at least a bachelor's degree. Okay, Chaplain Harris.
Same thing. You have to. I was graduating from Christian Brother with my bachelor, and I graduated from that in 2007 in psychology. So you have to have the bachelor as well, but you also have to have an MD.
Okay, so in your context, in Henning at the penitentiary, you do have to have an MD?
Yeah.
Okay, so they just allowed you to, since you were serving in that capacity, they allowed you to finish that process, but you did have to ultimately finish that. Yes, Dr. Smith, what about, and Mark Luttrell, what are their educational requirements?
Same thing as Chaplain Harris was stating. I think she was working on her seminary degree when she was appointed as chaplain here. And so I was fortunate enough to already have my MDiv, and I had just completed my DMin. And so I was trying to tell them, do I get some extra pay or some extra bonus? Because I met the qualifications and some more. So,
Right.
Dr. Smith said you are bivocational. You did that doctorate in forming and growing churches for your other paycheck. So no, they are not going to compensate you for that. However, that's right. You have not because you asked not. But from the educational perspective, now one of the things, Chaplain Parham, you and I were talking about was, as far as the Master of Divinity is concerned, you were saying for your context, they actually require the Master of Divinity to be from a residential. You actually have to physically go to the seminary. It cannot be virtual or online. Why do you all think that is? I mean, personally, I think it's a wonderful thing. Here at MTS, our position and posture is, because ministry is relational, you need that face-to-face interaction. And the reality is that, as each of you who have been in this context know, you learn a lot from your classmates, not just from the professors, those who are serving in ministry. But why do you all think there's that residential requirement in the criminal justice system?
Well, from the standpoint that I deal with, so to clear up, so I do have an MDiv, it's online.
Right.
And other things that kind of helped me into the other chapter context. But when it came across me trying to advance, because there are always, there's levels of advancement in chaplaincy as well. So when I tried to advance, then that's when I kind of ran into, hey, you have to have a residential degree versus an online degree if you want to advance any further. Which brings me to MTS and to get the classroom experience. And definitely classroom experience, the opportunity to go out and intern. I think that helps with the basis that we was talking about, being board certified. But when you're in the classroom and you're going through a university and you interning, that helps with that requirement, because not every facility and every chaplaincy require that board certification, but they do expect the school to have you ready and trained to do ministry, and they're just going to add to their institutional concept onto your basis of ministry that you already got from a university.
Wonderful. Dr. Smith or Chaplain Harris, do you all have anything to add as far as what you think the requirement, the necessity of the requirement for the actual face-to-face experience?
I couldn't have did all my projects. It was good to do group projects. I learned a lot about my classmates, and I took all of my pastoral subjects from Dr. Ramsey. Oh, I just love his class.
I wish he was on. He's coming on later, but I'm going to make sure he gets that report. He's retiring within the year, but yeah. Wonderful.
But that was a good thing, to just being, the projects, because there are some projects that I learned that I use in the prison with the residents.
Is that right?
I took a lot from that, and I used it at the prison.
Dr. Smith, you did your MDiv at ITC. I assume yours was face-to-face. Is that correct?
I wouldn't have earned it if it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I'm so grateful that I had all of my opportunities in person and my D meeting. All of them were residential and in person. Not knocking the online. I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity. I applaud those who do virtual and who are online. You got to have a certain type of discipline to do that. But I do appreciate even more the in-person interaction. And I think you mentioned about how God made us to be relational people. And that gives us an opportunity to apply those things, like Chaplain Harris just mentioned, for when we are able to apply this work, which we call work, but it's really an extension of the ministry that God has called us to in person.
Yes, that's one of the things I was saying to Chaplain Parham and Chaplain Harris. I said, it's hard work, but it's heart work. God absolutely has to call you to it. And perhaps I remember, Chaplain Harris, that when we were doing Dr. Ramsey's class, Intro to Pastoral Care, he had a young lady, and I think it might have been Diane Harrison, but anyway, she worked in the women's prison and she would come and speak to our class. And so I do remember that experience. So again, I'm grateful that here at Memphis Theological, we do offer the combination, because we do understand that most of us are bivocational who serve in ministry. And so sometimes the schedule does not permit one to attend classes during the day. But what we try to do is offer the best of both worlds, both the virtual as well as the in-person, because as you just said, Chaplain Harris, we learn so much from one another. And I'm sure that matter of fact, I already know Dr. Smith in his classes here with his classmates, how they have shared and learned a lot from each other and continue to maintain that camaraderie. Because one of the other things that we've talked about earlier was the fact that because it can be rather challenging at times, you need to have somebody that you can go to. One of the things that Dr. Ramsey said last night, which I thought was so profound when we were talking to the chaplains in healthcare, was that oftentimes the counselor needs a counselor. The therapist needs a therapist. You need somebody that you can talk to, because in considering the fact that you have to maintain confidentiality and protect the best interests of these individuals, but sometimes you can't, it's like a pressure cooker. You can't have all of that just built up. You've got to have some place in which to vent, because as I think it was Chaplain Parham was talking about, those who the world perhaps has thrown away. And so you got to peel through all those layers of what they're going through and dealing with. And you can't take personal how they behave.
That's
because I can imagine if somebody had me pent up, I would not probably be the sweetest thing in the world like I am either. But you can't take it personally. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's correct.
It reminds
You must have moved, Dr. Smith, because we can't hear you clearly.
The Wounded Healer.
Yeah.
And it speaks about those of us who are providing services. Henry Nowlan that speaks about the Wounded Healer.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if you heard that or not, but an inmate asked me on just yesterday, if they should receive counseling or therapy once they are out. And I said, for sure, everybody needs that. And I mentioned about me needing therapy or counseling to help in daily duties and things that we do all around. I mean, it takes a special person, a special individual, unique individual to flow with those hostels and busts. I applaud Chaplain Parham. I applaud Chaplain Harris and other people who have served in their areas, because they seem to juggle it well. But I know that's by prayer and much patience, much peace, much therapy, much counseling that is taken. And I'm just waiting on Chaplain Harris before she tried to get away from this scene to instill in me some of those qualities and characteristics.
15 years, Chaplain Harris. How have you hung in there this long?
Ooh, much prayer. And also being able to talk to someone else that's in the same capacity. Just can't, sometimes I have to pick up that phone and I have to vent, because it's a lot. And the pandemic didn't help a lot, because we feel isolated with the pandemic, because everything had to stop. No visitors, no volunteers, because I have 500 volunteers.
Wow.
The volunteers could not come.
Right.
So it was doing it, me and the Lord. I'm driving an hour, so I got to talk to the Lord all the way up here, because usually when I get here, there might be a death in one of the residents' families, and I might have 2 and 3 in one day. And they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't go view the body, because we don't do funerals. So they couldn't even go view the body because of the pandemic.
Right.
They had to get DVDs sent in from the funeral. The family had to video the funeral so they can look at it on DVD. So
Right.
that
Right.
was hard.
Right.
I can only imagine. What do we say? But for the grace of God.
Grace of God.
You mentioned Chaplain Harris. Now that's something very intriguing. You said you all have 500 volunteers. Chaplain Parham and Dr. Smith, are there volunteer opportunities at your locations? Because I can imagine Dr. Smith has already said that one of the advantages he had was having volunteered in that capacity. And so one of the things we hear people asking is, how do I get into chaplaincy? And that's one of the things that we talked about last night, perhaps serving as a volunteer in it, because one of the things about volunteering in it, you may find out this is or this is not for you. So are there volunteers at all of your facilities, volunteer opportunities, I'm sorry, at all of your facilities?
Yes, in Arkansas, they volunteers facility. We about
Yes, there are.
I would like to borrow some of Chaplain Harris's people, but we got to, Tennessee, Arkansas, we ain't that far apart. But we about 200 volunteers, and so in Arkansas, we are uniquely set up to where, quite naturally, the pandemic shut it all down, but we slowly kind of getting back to it. We have different level of volunteers at and how we use them in Arkansas. We have what we call a casual volunteer who may come in and preach a church service and with their church and go back home. That's all they do. And then we have a next level that comes in and they'll come in and can go around the facility and minister to different inmates. And not only will they hold a service, but they'll go into the population and just minister and build presence. Then we have what we call a CRA, and they are almost like a chaplain that's not paid. And so they have their badge, they move around and move around just as a chaplain does. They'll do services. In our absence, they can sit there and watch a service for us so that we don't always have to be at 7 o'clock at night when we're on a normal time. So we got different levels of chaplains. And those things are help progress to a person to be a chaplain. Not necessarily have to have it, but I'm just saying those are good steps to progress to be a chaplain. Many of our volunteers have become chaplains.
Because I can imagine that, like I was asking one of the chaplains last night, I said, when you consider they do residency programs, but they only have 6 per year. And I said, well, if I were doing, say that again, Chaplain Harris.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, she was saying they only have 7 residents, except 7 residents annually. And I said, well, what would it take to move my application to the top? What are the types of things that you're looking for? And so as we were just talking about those volunteer opportunities, I would think that, as Chaplain Parham just said, and it's interesting that there are levels of volunteer opportunities. I think that's really awesome because, again, one may feel a calling to preach, whereas another one may feel more of a calling towards the counseling, and somebody else just may feel a calling to that gift of mercy and compassion to just be a good listener to people. So I think that's awesome. And something else you actually also mentioned, Chaplain Parham, when we were talking about the residential versus virtual, you mentioned that there are levels of chaplains in the criminal justice system. That's an interesting dynamic. How does that work?
So just in the state side, you can either be, you can become a chaplain that's over unit. So how Arkansas is broken down is there's a chaplain for every 500 inmates. If a unit doesn't hit the 500 inmate mark, you don't have a chaplain. So we have a chaplain that is close, we have to cover down on that unit. My unit, we have 1650 roughly. So it's 3 chaplains, and some of them are they just general chaplains. They come in, they get paid, they pay staff, they work with me. Then I'm on the level of a senior chaplain, so I'm over them. I'm a supervisory chaplain. When I talk about advancing, I'm talking about not in the state, but to the Federal Bureau of Prison. That's when your master divinity comes and definitely pay upgrade, all that. Who wouldn't want to advance if you're still doing the same? It's the same ministry. So when it comes to the federal prison outside the state, their requirements are a little bit different.
Interesting. So you're at the state level. Chaplain Harris, yours is federal level, right? Or no?
No, this is state.
State also? Okay. And so y'all are teaching me today. So there are federal, so what are the regional federal prisons in this area then? Do we have any?
Yes, we have, matter of fact, we had a federal, I'm at East Arkansas. Like I said, I got a federal prison probably about 20, 30 miles from me, right in Forest City, Arkansas.
Wow.
Prison. And then I believe there's one in Memphis area, if I'm not correct.
Is that correct?
There's one right directly across the street from Mark Luttrell.
Wow.
Federal. And let me, if I could add, Dr. Levant, you asked, and I know you're trying to appeal to those who are probably climbing in ministry and your students as well as anyone about chaplaincy. One of the things that I think is great, I think they asked me this at the administration about getting more volunteers and why is there a lack. It's not only because Chaplain Harris has taken all of the volunteers to work with her, but I think that one of the things, a lot of ministers, a lot of preachers, especially of our culture, they just need to know, like, these opportunities, what you're doing today is very helpful to getting the information out, saying there is a need, you do have access, and we do desire, the prisons, the jails, they do desire for volunteers, ministers, lay to come inside, and there is a need. And so I think our people are perishing for the lack of knowledge. It was foreign to me years ago. And I think that the more that we get the information out, one of our jobs,
you started dragging again, Dr. Smith. You were on a roll for a minute there.
Is that we coordinate the volunteers. So we have a dual role where we go out and get the volunteers or training so that they can get into the population in which we're serving these areas.
So who would one contact at your various facilities if they were interested in volunteering?
Thursday at 2:00.
They would contact the office of the chaplain.
Right.
Okay.
I think
they would
so.
contact the office of the chaplain, and we coordinate those volunteers. We take them through a small length of a training, and then we put them through a little process so that they could come in and have those rights and privileges to come in and volunteer under the stipulations that are provided by the state.
And so when our people call, they say, so I was on a conversation with Dr. Smith and Chaplain Parham and Chaplain Harris, and they said that there is a need. So therefore, I am volunteering my services. So at Mark Luttrell, you all want to say Dr. Smith and Chaplain Parham in Arkansas, the name of the facility that you're at. What's the specific name again? Of your facility, Chaplain Parham?
It's our East Arkansas Regional Unit. It's around the Marianna, Arkansas area.
Okay, East Arkansas, and Chaplain Harris and Henning, it's the
West Tennessee State Penitentiary.
Okay.
I'm up on the Women's Therapeutic Residential Center.
Okay, all right. So we want to put those names in the chat, Luke, so that they have the names of these facilities. So
Dr. Van, I like to add before we move forward right there, that section there. What a lot of people, don't understand that I'm at a 1650 unit, but not everybody in there has life. Some of them in there for 6 months, and eventually they're gonna go back to the community. When they go back to the community, as a chaplain, we're doing our part to minister to them and get them on a Lord bless, a good path to try to be good citizens when they turn back, and godly citizens. And when they come out to the community, it's good for them to have churches they can connect to that related to them on the inside. And as a benefit, we're missing a lot. When you don't come in and minister to the prison, you lose a pop, especially the male population. I know the female prison population is growing as well, but the male population is coming out and they're not going to church. And maybe if we can get more churches in to minister to them, they'll be able, when they release, be more apt to come to them. As a prison chaplain, they have policies in place that an inmate can't, even though he sees me every day, he cannot come to my church. We are only a limited contact for so many years before I can deal with an inmate. So I can't build my church on inmate population as a chaplain, because there's policies against that. But a church can come in and preach, and when they get ready to go to exit out, they'll have a church home to go to.
Also, there's a program. There are programs on the state level. Chaplain Harris will help me. Called Take One.
Yeah.
Take One. It's a program, and so what Take One does is that Take One, if there's a need, inmate need, and they want to, the churches, and it's not just Christian-based churches,
Right.
any religious-based organization,
Exactly.
because we service all of them. We have respect and we service all of them. If they want to mentor with a religious organization, be it a civic organization, a church, any particular thing, we mentor them so that what Chaplain Parham said, that while they're in, as well as upon their release, that they already have their relationship, and they will have someone to go to, or an organization or institution to go to upon their release. It's a very helpful thing. And as Chaplain Parham said, no, we're not building our own isolated churches. So we're partnering with that. And so it's a sticky situation but there is an opportunity and there is a program where we mentor. That's why it's so necessary to get that information out. So
how can one find out more about this Take One program?
Yes. Well, from Chaplain Harris and Chaplain Smith.
All right. I love it. I love it. I love it. So look, we're going to put y'all's contact information out there. But with that, with the Take One program that you're talking about, and you talk about the diversity, you just hit on a very important point, Dr. Smith, because one of the things that we were talking about last night is one of the advantages and one of the blessings of the educational experience at Memphis Theological Seminary is that we are an ecumenical institution or seminary, such that we have over 20 denominations represented. And I'm sure that Dr. Harris, Chaplain, look, I'm speaking it into existence.
Oh, yes,
Chaplain Harris would agree. But one of the advantages in the MDiv program in particular here is the opportunity. First of all, we have the interfaith requirement where you had to learn about other faith traditions. But I am certain that it's probably beneficial for you all, because you do have people coming in from various faith traditions and backgrounds. And so the Master of Divinity education, particularly when we talk about the face-to-face and the relational, that's probably beneficial and helpful as you serve people from various faith traditions or no faith traditions. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what we call a pluralistic environment. And we come in there and we got, in my unit, we got them from Wiccan, that's kind of dealing with the witchcraft, all the way up to the general modern day Christian, and all the Catholic, and everybody, has a different a way that they feel like they want to be served in their religious context. And so people always ask, but I don't want to be a chaplain because I don't want to learn all those religions. It's not necessarily, you don't have to learn different religions, but you kind of want to know a little bit of a basis about them so that you can help a person to practice their First Amendment right. Because once you take one person amendment right, you put in danger all of our amendment rights. And so the First Amendment right let us have the opportunity to practice religion. So I don't, when dealing with someone, I know just enough to make sure that they're doing the right thing, so they can carry out their whatever they're going to worship or their religious belief. But I always stand true to who I am. Never lose my identity as who God has called me to be.
And this is one of the, being a new neophyte, but this is one of the real part of being in ministry when you're able to provide these services. I know that Chaplain Harris, Chaplain Parham could tell you a plethora of stories and involvements that they've had with inmates, as well as not only the inmates, but even the staff and officers in which they deal with, we deal with daily. But we're inside of or behind these areas, or as we say on the outside, bars, etc. But these are the same people that God created, that we walk around with daily, some now who are confined to certain areas. And so we practice this now intentionally. We walk past, we get an opportunity on the outside to walk past them, ignore them, but inside you're confined. Hey, this is an opportunity and an intentional, a direct opportunity to provide the real call of what God has commissioned us to do and to be about, to talk to them real life issues of people who may have stumbled along the way. And now, hey, do they have an opportunity? Do they have a right? Do they have the privilege of saying, hey, can someone offer to me a plan of life, a plan of salvation, a right to the tree of life in whatever capacity, whatever belief, whatever race, whatever culture I've come from or I'm headed to? Can that be offered to me? And so I think all of us who are getting all these degrees and we're getting all these accolades, et cetera, are we practicing that? It's needed. And this is a right on, hands-on experience that one man, woman, boy, girl, whoever is practicing ministry, hey, the opportunity is right available.
That is awesome. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that conversation, Chaplain Harris?
Yes, because you have to really get in the trenches with them. This is something different. I can remember saying, you know, I didn't ever want to be a pastor of a church, and someone said, you are a pastor.
You are a pastor, yes.
You just have a different church.
Right.
And mostly it's where people that are they're just thrown away, they cannot go back home.
Right.
They don't have a home to go to. We have to find halfway houses and transition houses for them to go. We also do that as well. So trying to make sure that they just don't leave here and be out there on the street, you know. So we have to be able to find somewhere for them. That's why I'm always asking for mentors. He talks about take one, but we also asking for mentors as well. So I'd like to see every female in here have their own mentor. You know, just like I have someone who I can talk with, I want them to be able to have someone who they can be able to talk with as well, that they can conversate with as well. I can't do 1,000 women. I can't do that by myself. So I always tell volunteers that I'm not here to do this alone.
Chaplain Harris, you convicting us today. You convicting us today. Because I think about on the conversation that you all are having right now. I mean, first of all, when we think about it, these very people that we're talking about, these brothers and sisters, not just people that you're talking about, these are those who Jesus called us to minister to. In Matthew 25, he said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a prisoner, you visited me. When I was naked, you clothed me. These are the people that not only is he's calling us to minister to, but those were the ones that he ministered to. You know, that's what he got in trouble for, being there for the least of these and the lost. And I fear that those of us, Dr. Smith was just talking about all these accolades and credentials, but the thing is, he goes on in that particular text to talk about that when it comes time to separate the sheep from the goats, that there are those of us who got all these credentials, but we didn't do anything that he said, and we will not receive that welcome necessarily. And so it's critical and crucial that we do. And I think about, I tell people all the time in recruiting when they talk about not wanting to, I don't want to hear about all these other faith traditions. And yet we think about Jesus with the Samaritan woman at the well. What was the first thing she said? Y'all don't have, your kind doesn't have anything to do with our kind. So therefore, if we're going to be able to minister to people, as Dr. Smith just said, we need to understand where they're coming from. As Chaplain Parham said, he said, I stay true to myself. I don't move off of it. But how can you, if you don't care enough about where I am to understand where I am and understand who I am, how can you minister to me? Because as we say all the time, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And you don't necessarily have to have all these degrees, as you all were just saying, to show compassion for people. And that's what Jesus was known for, his compassion. We're going to have church here today. So,
Hallelujah.
Does anybody, what would you say? You all have already discussed some of the challenging aspects of ministry, but talk about a typical day for you, prayerfully post-pandemic now, because prayerfully speaking of which, so have most of your inmates had an opportunity to be vaccinated where you all are?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm thinking, you all have that risk of an exposure if you're dealing on a daily basis with people who are not necessarily vaccinated, and so you go into the lion's den every day.
Yes.
But you can't neglect people.
So every Monday, I go, well, depending on when you come in, my first day is a Monday. I take a COVID test.
Okay.
Your finger be crawling, everything. Prayer, we had to take a COVID test, make sure we're not positive. So they issue, in the state of Arkansas, issue each employee a COVID test before they let you, and volunteers as well. We've allowed some volunteers to come back to take a test before you get into the general unit or be around the employees.
Okay. Because now that you've mentioned it, Chaplain Parham, I never thought about it, but we talk about the possibility for exposure, but 9 times out of 10, it's those from the outside population bringing it in. It's not the ones from the inside population that would have it. And so that means there's the risk of exposing them to it. Are there any other challenges? I see you ready to say something, Chaplain Harris. Go ahead.
No, I just said we had our volunteers. Our volunteers just started coming back in May. A lot of them have not returned because of COVID. However, they have to wear a mask.
Okay.
The residents, most of them are still wearing their masks. They don't necessarily have to wear a mask. We have small groups of service. We're not having big groups of service as of yet.
Okay.
So, but I try to make sure that the volunteers are safe, and I try to make sure that the residents are safe as well. So, but everybody been in compliance with the mask, so it's been working out pretty good. Because
Wonderful.
the volunteer was ready to come back. They was ready to come back in. They was ready. They would send cards, encouraging cards, because I needed something for them to be encouraged. Because you could see people, you could see residents getting depressed. So they started sending encouraging cards then for them. We end up with snack bags. Volunteers made snack bags for them, so they had snack bags. So things, we had a lot of help during the pandemic. So things like, and since the volunteers has returned, everybody's happy, including the staff.
Right.
Wonderful. Those are some good points you just made, Chaplain Harris. What are other ways that churches can support besides just the physical presence? You mentioned snack bags, you mentioned cards of encouragement. What other support could be provided or offered?
Well, now I'm getting ready to have donation of hygiene. You go to Dollar Tree. You can go to Dollar Tree and get their shampoo. They're getting shampoo, they're getting conditioner. They're getting toothbrushes and toothpaste and everything. So I'm having that donation, and the delivery date for that donation is November the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th.
Okay, right around Thanksgiving.
Around Thanksgiving, I work.
Okay.
So I do have I have one church that's going to be delivering 500. They put them in Ziploc bags. Because I have 1,000 residents, so I'm trying to make sure everyone gets hygiene, and they love the hygiene because they, that's a difference, especially if you in here for a long period of time. And so they love their shampoo, they love their conditioner, they love the toothpaste and the toothbrush.
Right.
And it's interesting that you say that, because those of us on the outside who don't know any better, you would assume that that's just a part of what's provided to them and their resources as they are incarcerated, and you would not realize, I did not realize that they don't necessarily have all of that, or they may not have the kind they like.
They don't yes, that's what it is. They don't have that kind.
The kind that they like. What a blessing.
Yes.
You all have been such a blessing to us today. It's been so refreshing because, again, this aspect of chaplaincy that you all have discussed is the opportunities, the educational requirements, the challenges, and the benefits. There are some different nuances versus all of the requirements that we discussed last night with healthcare. And Chaplain Harris, you mentioned Dr. Ramsey, your favorite professor. He has now joined us. And so we are so excited to have him as a part. But are there any, if you were to talk to an aspiring chaplain today, because one of the things I think about as we've had this conversation versus a conversation last night, I think sometimes we get stuck on thinking that certain roles, i.e. chaplains, can only be in certain contexts. But my thing is that if you really sense a calling, if you really have a heart for people, you can't necessarily relegate yourself to any one particular place. And so what I'm really excited about and what's really refreshing is that what you all are sharing today is that there are plenty of opportunities in the criminal justice system, both voluntarily as well as paid. And so if one were really committed to and really sensing a calling to serve the least and the lost, who Jesus has called us to, there is no shortage. Whereas we talked about last night in the healthcare arena, it can be very competitive and limited, but you all are saying there's plenty good room in the criminal justice system. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. So are there any last thoughts that any of you would like to add for to encourage our audience today with regards to opportunities to serve in chaplaincy in the criminal justice system? Because I know, for instance, Chaplain Harris, you were saying where you are, there are both male and female residents on the property. You service the females. Dr. Smith is saying his is strictly male. Chaplain Parham, is yours male and female also?
Just male, just all male.
Okay, the population is just male. So any words of encouragement? Well, Chaplain, let me ask you this question real quick, Chaplain Harris, because you have actually served both populations in the past, haven't you? Or have you always only served women?
Well, I served women as a chaplain. I served men when I was an officer when I first went to Mark Lutcher.
Okay. Are there any, now, I got a good question. Are there any women that serve in the male population, or do they only regulate, you know what I'm saying? Can you only serve your gender as far as chaplaincy?
I believe.
In Arkansas, we have a lady that is a chaplain. She's got a dual, the unique situation where there's a male facility on one side and a female facility on another, and she goes back and forth. She's not the only chaplain in the unit, but she is the senior chaplain, and so she deals with the male and the female side of it.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is state level, right? You mentioned, because you all were talking about federal versus state.
Right.
Okay. And Chaplain Harris?
I did have a volunteer chaplain that was serving with me, but he was on a volunteer, but he loved it. So he retired. He just retired a couple of weeks ago. So if anyone, I'm looking for a volunteer chaplain.
Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. We say that's a way to get your foot in the door.
Me too.
Look, all of you. I told you we're gonna put your contact information out there. And thank you all for telling us about that Take One program.
Dr. Levant.
Yes.
You asked about aspiring chaplains.
Yes.
Somebody said to me, "Oh, you're a chaplain now. So what do you do? Just go around praying for folk every day, all day?" And I wanted to put that disclaimer out. It's more to just going around praying.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm probably not corporately praying on a typical day. I'm not doing a corporate prayer. We have there's so much other things. People need service, and they need someone that can provide those caring. Chaplain, I call those doctor too. Chaplain Harris mentioned about her pastoring, and that someone said, you are a pastor, just in a different capacity. Because technically, that's what you're doing. You're seeing after their needs. They have deaths in their family that you have to coordinate, contact with. They have physical needs. They have mental needs, emotional things. Someone to talk to about coordinating programs within the facility. And so all of those things are part of the chaplain work that you do on a daily, a typical day. It's more than just saying, oh, we're going to open up a Bible or open up something and preach and pray. Yes, we do that, but it's more to that. And so it's a work within itself. It's a ministry within itself. So aspiring chaplains, I would say, get involved. There are opportunities. You're needed, and someone needs you.
Amen.
I like to add to that.
Okay.
Definitely. Sometimes people don't. A lot of people don't know what chaplains do, but it's major. It's very impactful. To add that, if you have a inmate to die, we at Arkansas, we call the family. We don't want to notify that parent, their loved one, that your loved one in here passed away, and sometimes that's a tough thing to do, and you try and encourage that family who's hurting, and also sometimes they blaming the facility for their loved one's death, and then not only that, they consider us as a SMED, a subject matter expert. So I'm in my wardens here. When they come to religious problem, they come to the chaplain and, hey, chaplain, how we don't want to get sued. How can we get out of this? Because the inmates will sue. And if it's not in order, if you as a chaplain have done something to mess it up, they'll win their lawsuit. And so you are also a guide to the administration and your leadership. I meet with my the management team every Monday. And then also in that management team, I pray with them. And then staff need chaplains. Sometimes they go through stuff in their life, especially in the midst of the pandemic. And I'm pretty sure they know as well that there's low job. I mean, it's hard to get workers. And so you have people working double shift, triple shifts, trying to serve the unit, and they're tired and they need somebody to pray with them, and they need some ministry. And when they have get COVID themselves or death in their family. So you're not just a chaplain for the inmate, you're also a chaplain for the staff as well. And so there's pastoral counseling, organizing, recruiting volunteers, promoting, is all of that is involved.
Amen.
That's awesome. And actually that aligns with one of the questions I asked last night, because I was telling them that I asked one of my former classmates who serves as a chaplain at a hospital in Jackson. And I asked him, I said, well, why do you think, I said, why would a MDiv be required with the robust, the classes, then the preaching and the worship and in addition to the pastoral care and the cultural aspect. And so just as you all are saying, what he was saying was that, well, we do all of those things. People don't think about it, but as chaplains, we do more than just counsel people. He said, we baptize, we bless, we serve the sacraments, and so to that point, now is ordination required to serve as a chaplain in the prison system or the criminal justice? So ordination is a requirement.
Yeah.
Okay.
License and ordination.
Yes.
And they want you in our context, you also need to be endorsed.
Is that right?
Yeah, and definitely, I think on the state level and the federal level. Matter of fact, the state level has a document, just like the military side has a document that, I'm endorsed to the National Baptist Convention. So but on the state level, they will accept it from your local church. I mean, if your local church endorsing, so you not only ordained, but somebody got to write a statement saying this person is in integrity, good character, and we stand behind this person coming to your prison, ministering to inmates. Which is what that does. That leaves a level of accountability. So if a volunteer messes up, we need to be able to go back to somebody that's over them, their parent body, and say, "Hey, look, your volunteer is putting us in jeopardy." And so that's kind of, we hold a level of accountability. And so I think that endorsement as well as ordination is prevalent, especially in the state of Arkansas.
Awesome. So similar to chaplaincy in other arenas, even though you don't necessarily require the board certification, you do require the ordination and the endorsement. So right. That's helpful to know. Well, we have come to the end of our time. Again, I cannot thank you all enough. These experiences, these conversations have been blessing me, and I know that those who have been listening, who have been wrestling, who have been sensing a call, that this has been helpful for them. And I'm sure Dr. Ramsey can attest to that, because he's one of the first people that our students go to who are sensing that call to chaplaincy. So again, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy schedules. Like I said, we will share the information, share your information. You have already subliminally agreed, because you need volunteers. So therefore, you are available to be contacted. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Dr. Ramsey say a word to you all before we release you, and he has answers questions. Dr. Ramsey?
Yes, welcome everyone. I've been overhearing, they keep the reins on me. They don't want me to be on while y'all are talking, because they know I have a tendency to jump in and just keep running my mouth. But it's good to see you, Dr. Smith, Chaplain Parham, Chaplain Harris. Great to see all of y'all, and thank you for your good work that you're doing in your various locations. I was able to overhear about the last 15 or 20 minutes. And I know that, you know, we're kind of in a new day here at the seminary with a lot of students expressing interest in chaplaincy ministry and in settings outside of the local church as well as inside the local church. So thank you for being available to us today, and available to, maybe if you're willing, I know Dr. Felicia was asking if you know, you'd be willing to be contacted and answer some questions one-on-one from some of our students. I expect you'll be getting some emails in the days ahead. But thank y'all very much, and let us know how we can continue to serve and support y'all too at the seminary.
Dr. Ramsey, you know, now I just thought about something. Have any of our clinical practicums, to your knowledge, ever been in the criminal justice system?
One or two, but I could not tell you who, and it's been over the 23 years that I've been at MTS, but one or two have managed, you know, to get volunteer chaplaincy status to work with inside one of the penitentiaries or facilities. I just can't be specific about that.
Okay, well, no, I was just thinking, because that could be, you know, that's good to know that they're talking about the necessity of volunteers. And so perhaps that can be one, because again, like I said, I know that a lot of the students come to you. So
Sure.
It's good to know that there are these opportunities. That
and it could work the other way too. You know, if Chaplain Parham or Chaplain Harris or Dr. Smith have somebody that you know that would qualify and they are already enrolled in the seminary, encourage them to consider, you know, working as a volunteer. I know that there are important protocols and guidelines, hurdles that they have to get over in order to get approved. And part of that, so, you know, has to work on the timeline that they're in when they're enrolled for that clinical practicum. But I'd love to see more of them in your settings. I think it would be a really huge,
And Dr. Ramsey, I cannot miss the opportunity to piggyback on what you just said, because if they know individuals who are volunteering and are sensing that call and need that Master of Divinity, as you all have talked about, we at Memphis Theological Seminary, you know that we're a great place for them to get that education. So please direct them our way to Luke and myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So bless you all. Dr. Ramsey, you're releasing them?
Yes, that'd be fine. I know they got busy things to do, probably lunch too.
Thank you all. You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.